I left the envelope on the kitchen counter on a Tuesday morning, right next to the coffee maker where everyone would see it. The letterhead was unmistakable: Mercy General Hospital Oncology Department, and inside, folded in crisp white paper, was the diagnosis that would change everything. Stage 3. Aggressive. Treatment needed immediately. I didn't hide it. I didn't tuck it away in a drawer or slip it into my purse. I left it there in plain sight, because I thought my family would care enough to notice. They didn't. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, leave a comment and tell me where you are. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, you'll understand every word of what I'm about to tell you. Make sure you check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about people like us, who were overlooked until we decided to take our power back. My name is Eleanor. I'm 63 years old, and I spent the better part of 4 decades building a life I thought mattered. I raised 3 children in a sprawling colonial house in Connecticut, the kind with the white picket fence and the garden beds I tended every spring. My husband, Richard, was a corporate attorney who worked long hours and came home smelling like scotch and expensive Cygate smoke. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. I thought we were a team. I thought, after all those years of holding everything together, that when something truly terrible happened, they would show up for me. I was wrong. The envelope sat there for 6 days. 6 entire days. I watched my daughter, Katie, walk past it every morning to grab her protein shake before her Pilates class. I watched my son, Daniel, brush by it as he rifled through the mail looking for his investment statements. I watched my youngest, Sarah, glance at it once, then turn away to scroll through her phone. And Richard? Richard moved it aside one evening to make room for his dinner plate, then pushed it back without a second glance. Not once did anyone ask me what it was. Not once did anyone pick it up. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Maybe I had become so background, so routine, so expected, that even something as monumental as a cancer diagnosis could blend into the wallpaper of their lives. I cooked their meals. I paid their bills. I kept the house running like a well-oiled machine. But when I needed them to see me, really see me, I might as well have been a ghost. On the 7th day, I made a decision. I didn't make it out of anger, not at first. I made it out of clarity. A kind of cold, sharp clarity that settles over you when you realize you've been giving everything to people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. I sat at the kitchen table that morning, staring at the envelope, and I thought about what my life had been, what it had become, and what I wanted it to be for whatever time I had left. I called my attorney. Not Richard's attorney, mine. A woman named Patricia whom I'd met years ago at a charity luncheon and stayed in touch with over the occasional coffee. She was sharp, no nonsense, and she didn't waste time with pleasantries when I told her what I needed. I wanted to sell the house. I wanted to liquidate assets. I wanted to disappear before the treatment made me too weak to do it myself. Patricia didn't ask why. She just said, "How soon?" The house was in my name. My mother had left it to me when she passed, and though Richard had lived in it for 30 years legally, it was mine. The investment accounts I'd inherited from my father? Also mine. The vacation property in the Berkshires? Mine. Over the years, I'd let Richard manage things, let him feel like the provider, but the truth was, I'd always held the cards. I just never played them. Until now. I listed the house quietly, through a private real estate agent who specialized in discreet sales. No sign in the yard. No open houses. Just a network of wealthy buyers who wanted properties like ours and didn't ask questions. Within 3 days, I had an offer. Cash. Above asking price. The buyers wanted to close in 2 weeks. I accepted. I didn't tell Richard. I didn't tell the kids. I went about my days as if nothing had changed, cooking dinners and folding laundry and pretending the envelope on the counter didn't exist, just like they did. But inside, I was planning. I was researching beachfront properties in North Carolina, far enough away that they'd never think to look for me there. I found a villa, modest but beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic and a wraparound porch where I could sit and watch the sunrise. It was available for immediate occupancy. I put down a deposit. The night before the closing, I packed a single suitcase. I took only what mattered: my mother's jewelry, a few photo albums from before the kids grew cold and distant, some clothes, and the medical records I'd need for treatment. Everything else, I left behind. The furniture, the dishes, the memories, they could have it all. They'd earned nothing, but I was done fighting for scraps of their attention. I left the house at 5 in the morning, while everyone was still asleep. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just took the envelope off the counter, slipped it into my purse, and walked out the door. The closing happened at 10. By noon, the money was in my account, and I was halfway to the coast. I stopped once, at a small diner off the highway, and ordered coffee and pie. The waitress, a woman about my age with kind eyes, asked if I was heading somewhere special. I smiled and said, "I'm heading somewhere I matter." She squeezed my hand and said, "Good for you, honey." I didn't cry until I reached the villa. It hit me all at once when I stepped inside and saw the ocean stretching out forever, vast and indifferent and beautiful. I cried for the years I'd wasted. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who believed love was enough. And then I stopped crying, because I realized something. I wasn't running away. I was running toward something. Toward peace. Toward myself. I didn't know it yet, but they'd notice soon enough. And when they did, everything would unravel. The first call came 3 days after I arrived at the villa. I was sitting on the porch, watching the waves roll in, when my phone buzzed. Richard's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Katie called. Then Daniel. Then Sarah. One after another, like dominoes falling. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I listened to the voicemails later that night, curled up in a wicker chair with a glass of wine and the sound of the ocean as my soundtrack. Richard's voice was clipped, irritated. "Eleanor, where the hell are you? There's a for sale sign in the yard and some people showed up saying they own the house now. Call me back immediately." Katie's message was panicked, high-pitched. "Mom, what's going on? Dad says you sold the house? Why would you do that? Call me." Daniel didn't even bother with pleasantries. "This is insane, Mom. You need to fix this. Now." And Sarah, my youngest, the one I thought might have a shred of empathy, just sounded confused. "Mom, are you okay? Please call us back. We're worried." Worried. That word almost made me laugh. They weren't worried when the envelope sat on the counter for a week. They weren't worried when I stopped smiling at dinner or when I started losing weight because I couldn't eat anymore. They were worried now because their comfortable little world had been disrupted, and they didn't know how to fix it without me. I deleted the voicemails and turned off my phone. The next few days were a blur of messages and missed calls. They tried everything. Texts, emails, even a message through Patricia, my attorney, demanding to know where I was and what I'd done with their house. Patricia, bless her, played dumb and reminded them that the house had always been in my name and that I was well within my rights to sell it. That didn't stop them. If anything, it made them more desperate. By the end of the first week, Richard showed up at Patricia's office, demanding answers. She called me afterward, her voice dripping with barely concealed amusement. "Your husband is not a happy man, Eleanor. He threatened to sue me, if you can believe that. I told him he was welcome to try, but he wouldn't get far." I thanked her and hung up, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because they were finally paying attention. Sadness because it had taken this, me disappearing, me selling everything, me walking away, for them to even notice I existed. If you've ever been taken for granted by the people you love most, hit the subscribe button. You're not alone in this. And check the description box below for more stories about people who refused to stay invisible. The breaking point came 2 weeks after I left. I was sitting on the beach, my feet buried in the sand, when my phone rang again. This time, it was Katie, and something in me softened just enough to answer. Maybe it was the ocean air. Maybe it was the part of me that still wanted to believe she cared. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "Please. Just tell us where you are. We need to talk to you." "About what?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "About everything. About the house, about why you left, about..." She paused, and I could hear her breathing fast and shallow. "Mom, are you sick? Dad found some paperwork." Something about a hospital. There it was. The envelope. They'd finally opened it. I left that on the counter 2 weeks ago, I said quietly. Right next to the coffee maker. You walked past it every day. Silence. Mom, I didn't see it. I swear, I didn't. You didn't want to see it, I interrupted. None of you did. I needed you, Katie. I needed all of you. And you couldn't be bothered to pick up a piece of paper and ask me if I was okay. That's not fair, she said, her voice breaking. We didn't know. You didn't ask. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. That's the difference. You didn't ask. She started to cry then, big, heaving sobs that might have moved me once. But I was done being moved by their guilt. Guilt wasn't love. Guilt was just the thing people felt when they realized they'd failed you. Where are you? She asked again, her voice small. I'm somewhere I matter, I said, echoing the words I'd told the waitress. And I'm not coming back. I hung up before she could respond. That night, the calls multiplied. Richard, Daniel, Sarah, even some of their spouses and friends, people I barely knew, all trying to reach me, to convince me to come home, to undo what I'd done. But I didn't answer. I sat on the porch and watched the stars and felt, for the first time in years, like I could breathe. The villa became my sanctuary. I started treatment at a small hospital nearby, a place where the nurses learned my name and asked how I was feeling, not out of obligation, but because they actually cared. The oncologist, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Bennett, sat with me during my first appointment and held my hand when I cried. He didn't try to fix it or tell me it would be okay. He just sat there, present, and that meant more than anything my family had done in years. I decorated the villa slowly, carefully, choosing things that made me happy. Bright throw pillows, a bookshelf filled with novels I'd always wanted to read, a painting of the ocean I bought from a local artist. I planted flowers in the small garden out front, even though I didn't know if I'd be around to see them bloom. It didn't matter. I was doing it for me, not for anyone else. But the calls didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. Richard hired a private investigator to track me down, and when that didn't work, he started calling Patricia daily, threatening lawsuits and demanding I return his share of the money from the house sale. Patricia shut him down every time, reminding him that marital assets didn't work the way he thought they did, especially when the property had been mine long before the marriage. Still, his desperation was almost amusing. Almost. And then, one morning, I woke up to find Daniel standing on my porch. I don't know how he found me. Maybe he hired his own investigator. Maybe he talked to someone at the hospital. But there he was, unshaven and disheveled, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I opened the door slowly, my heart pounding. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Please. We need to talk." I didn't invite him in. I just stood there, blocking the doorway, and waited. "I'm sorry," he said, and for a moment, I almost believed him. "I'm sorry I didn't see the envelope. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I'm sorry for all of it. But you can't just disappear like this. You can't just leave us." "Why not?" I asked. "You left me long before I left you." He flinched, and I saw the truth of it hit him. But I didn't soften. I didn't let him in. I just closed the door and walked back inside, leaving him standing there in the morning sun. He didn't knock again. The weeks that followed Daniel's visit were strange. The calls slowed, then stopped altogether. It was as if they'd finally realized I wasn't coming back, and they didn't know what to do with that information. I imagined them sitting in their new apartments and rental houses, scattered across the state, trying to piece together their lives without the foundation I'd built for them. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt free. I threw myself into treatment. The chemo was brutal, waves of nausea, exhaustion so deep I could barely stand, hair falling out in clumps until I just shaved it all off and bought a collection of colorful scarves. But I kept going. I went to every appointment. I took every pill. I showed up for myself in ways I'd never shown up before, and slowly, impossibly, I started to feel stronger. Not physically, not yet, but mentally. Emotionally. I was reclaiming pieces of myself I'd forgotten existed. The villa became more than a refuge. It became a home. I made friends with my neighbors, an older couple named Frank and Diane who'd retired to the coast years ago and spent their days fishing and playing cards. They invited me over for dinner once a week, and we'd sit on their porch and talk about everything and nothing. They didn't pry. They didn't ask why I was alone or where my family was. They just accepted me, and that was enough. I also started writing. I'd always wanted to write poems, essays, maybe even a book someday, but I'd never had the time. Or maybe I'd never made the time. Now, with the ocean as my muse and nothing but hours stretching before me, I filled notebook after notebook with words. Some of it was angry, raw, unfiltered rage at the people who'd abandoned me. Some of it was reflective, tender even, as I sifted through memories and tried to understand how I'd ended up here. And some of it was hopeful, tentative explorations of what life might look like if I survived this. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from scratch, you know how terrifying and exhilarating it can be. If this story is resonating with you, leave a comment and let me know. And don't forget to check the description box below for more stories like this, stories about survival and second chances. Then, one afternoon, Sarah called. Not from her usual number, but from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. Her voice was small, tentative. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I know you're angry, she continued. I know we messed up. But I need you to know that I've been thinking about you every single day. I can't stop thinking about that envelope, about how I walked past it and didn't even care enough to ask what it was. I hate myself for that, Mom. I really do. Her words hung in the air, heavy and raw. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to forgive her. But trust, once broken, doesn't just magically repair itself. Why are you calling, Sarah? I asked finally. Because I miss you, she said, her voice breaking. Because I love you. And because I don't want you to die thinking we didn't care. That last part hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat down on the porch steps, my hand shaking as I held the phone. I'm not dying, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but cancer doesn't come with guarantees. But you're sick, she said. And we should have been there. I should have been there. You should have, I agreed. But you weren't. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Can I come see you? Just me. I won't tell anyone where you are. I need to see you, Mom. Please. I thought about it. I thought about the years I'd spent loving her, raising her, trying to be the mother she needed. I thought about the way she'd walked past that envelope without a second glance. And I thought about the sound of her voice now, broken and desperate, and I wondered if people could really change. I'll think about it, I said finally, and hung up before she could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words in my head, weighing them against everything that had happened. Part of me wanted to let her come, to give her a chance to prove she meant what she said. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt too many times, didn't want to risk it. I'd built something here, something fragile and precious, and I didn't want to let anyone in who might shatter it. A few days later, Patricia called. Eleanor, I thought you should know. Richard filed for divorce. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I'd expected it. What did surprise me was how little I cared. Good, I said simply. There's more, Patricia continued. He's trying to claim you abandoned him and that he's entitled to spousal support. It's laughable, of course, but I wanted you to be aware. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Let him try. Patricia assured me she'd handle it, and I believed her. Richard could file whatever he wanted. He could rage and threaten and play the victim. It didn't matter anymore. He'd lost his power over me the moment I walked out that door. But the kids were different. The kids still had a piece of my heart, no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise. And when Sarah called again, and then again, each time more earnest than the last, I found myself softening. Not forgiving, not yet, but softening. Finally, I agreed to let her visit. She arrived on a Saturday morning, carrying a small duffel bag and a bouquet of wildflowers. She looked older than I remembered, tired, like she'd been carrying a weight she didn't know how to put down. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she burst into tears. "Mom," she whispered, and I let her hug me. I didn't hug her back, not at first, but I didn't push her away either. We spent the weekend together, walking on the beach, talking in fits and starts, navigating the minefield of everything left unsaid. She apologized over and over, and I listened, but I didn't let her off the hook. I told her how it felt to be invisible. I told her how much it hurt to realize that the people I'd given my life to couldn't even be bothered to notice when I was dying. She cried. I didn't. But by the end of the weekend, something had shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. She promised to do better, to be present, to see me. I told her I'd believe it when I saw it. When she left, I stood on the porch and watched her car disappear down the road. And for the first time since I'd left, I felt something other than anger. I felt possibility. The months that followed were a mix of hard and beautiful. The treatment continued, and some days I felt like I was barely holding on. But other days, I felt alive in ways I hadn't in decades. I watched sunrises. I read books. I planted more flowers, and when they bloomed, I cried because I was still here to see them. Sarah came back to visit twice more, and each time, she showed up a little more present, a little more real. She started calling regularly, not to ask for anything, but just to check in. To tell me about her day. To ask about mine. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and I held on to it like a lifeline. Katie called too, eventually. Her apology was messier, more defensive, but I could hear the sincerity underneath. She didn't visit. She said she couldn't take the time off work, but she sent cards. She sent flowers. She tried. Daniel never called. Richard, on the other hand, spiraled. According to Patricia, he'd moved in with a girlfriend half his age, some paralegal from his firm, and was hemorrhaging money trying to maintain the lifestyle he thought he deserved. The divorce was finalized quietly, and I signed the papers without a second thought. He got nothing. I made sure of that. The villa became my world. I decorated it, filled it with life and light and things that mattered. I made new friends. I joined a book club. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, walking dogs and cuddling cats and finding joy in the simple act of caring for something other than myself. And slowly, impossibly, the scans started to improve. The tumors were shrinking. The treatment was working. Dr. Bennett said I was one of the lucky ones, and I wasn't sure I believed in luck anymore, but I believed in survival. I believed in showing up. I believed in the power of choosing yourself. One evening, about 8 months after I'd left, I was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea when my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I stared at his name for a long time, debating whether to answer. Finally, I did. "Mom," he said, and his voice was different. Softer. Broken. "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. "I know I don't deserve to talk to you," he continued. "I know I screwed up. I was selfish and stupid, and I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were going through, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Why are you calling now?" I asked. "Because I lost my job," he said quietly. "And my girlfriend left me. And I've been sitting in my apartment for the past week, alone, wondering how everything fell apart. And then I realized, you must have felt like this. All those years, you must have felt exactly like this. Invisible. Unimportant. Like nothing you did mattered." I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I was back in that kitchen, staring at the envelope no one would touch. "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly how I felt." "I'm sorry," he said again, and this time, I believed him. We talked for a long time that night. I didn't forgive him, not fully, but I listened. And when we hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not closure, exactly, but a kind of peace. A recognition that people are flawed and messy and sometimes they fail you. But sometimes, if you're lucky, they also try to do better. Sarah called the next day and told me she was moving closer to the coast. She'd gotten a new job, something she was excited about, and she wanted to be near me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said, "Okay." But inside, I felt something warm and fragile unfurl in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or something like it. Katie sent me a long email, pages and pages of apologies and explanations and promises to do better. I read it twice, then put it away. I wasn't ready to respond yet, but I didn't delete it either. And Richard? I never heard from him again. I didn't need to. I spent my 64th birthday on the beach, surrounded by the people who mattered, Frank and Diane, Sarah, a few friends from the book club. We built a bonfire and roasted marshmallows and told stories, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt whole. Not because everything was perfect. Not because everyone had come back. But because I had chosen this life, this moment, this version of myself. And that was enough. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness to my story. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever had to choose yourself over the people who failed you, I hope you know you're not alone. Hit the subscribe button if this story moved you, and check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about resilience, survival, and the courage it takes to walk away. The scans came back clear a year after I left. Clear. I sat in Dr. Bennett's office and cried, not because I was surprised, I'd been feeling stronger for months, but because I'd made it. I'd survived. Not just the cancer, but everything that came with it. The betrayal. The loneliness. The choice to start over when I had every reason to give up. I'm still here. I'm still in the villa, still watching the sunrises, still planting flowers and writing in my notebooks and living the life I chose. My kids call sometimes. Sarah visits regularly. Daniel is trying. Katie is. Katie. And that's okay. I don't need them to be perfect. I just need them to show up. And me? I show up for myself. Every single day. Because that diagnosis they ignored on the counter? It didn't break me. It freed me. It showed me who I was when everything else fell away. And what I found, beneath all the years of giving and sacrificing and shrinking myself to fit into their lives, was a woman who was stronger than she ever knew. A woman who deserved to be seen. A woman who mattered. I matter. And if you're reading this, so do you. Don't wait for someone else to see you. Don't wait for a diagnosis or a disaster to give yourself permission to choose you. Do it now. Walk away from what doesn't serve you. Build the life you deserve. And don't ever, ever let anyone make you feel invisible again. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about people who refused to disappear, who reclaimed their power, and who found themselves on the other side of betrayal. You're not alone. You never were.